and welcome back. My name is Ashley with Lavish Photography. If you are new here, I have been a portrait photographer for 12 years now. I shoot primarily high school seniors, but also do newborns, families, and some branding shots as well. So today's video is start of a brand new series on this channel. I'm hoping to continue to do this. I will have to invest a little bit to do this series because I will have to be renting some camera gear, but let me know if you want me to continue this because I definitely want to. But today I'm going to be trying out a Sony camera. So a little bit of background, I am a Canon user through and through. I switched to mirrorless about a year and a half ago. I used the Canon R6 and I used a Nikon when I worked at JCPenney Portraits in college, but Canon is just what I'm most comfortable with. It's just what I prefer to use. But when I was switching to mirrorless, I was curious to see how it compared, the Canon compared to the other brands in mirrorless. So I thought of this series, I want to try out all the different brands of mirrorless cameras. So we're gonna start with Sony because my good friend Allie actually just bought the Sony A7 IV, and so I didn't have to rent it. So we got together this week and we shot a couple of videos. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with the Sony. I only had like 35 to 40 minutes with it. We were on a time crunch, but I did get some initial thoughts. This video was originally going to be just all in the studio. We filmed an intro there and everything, but unfortunately the audio is not really usable. I could use it, but there's this hum in the background. There was a very loud air conditioner in the studio, so I'm going to put in clips from it, but I'm going to talk through it because the sound was just, it was too annoying and I didn't think people would actually want to sit through the video. So we are in Dallas at the Space on Southside. Get to see me using the camera and I'm going to talk through it. Ask her what lens it was and I will leave it on the screen, what lens and body combination. We'll put it right here on the screen so you know exactly what gear I'm using. But again, these are my first initial impressions of the Sony, and let's get into some of this footage. She's had this camera for about a month or so, so she's used it a handful of times, and I'm going to give you some of her thoughts after using it for about a month. Let's dive in first to the footage. Right off the bat, I put my card in the wrong slot. It is a dual slot camera, and I put it in the wrong spot, and it said there was no card in, so that's what she's doing here. She's showing me, you know, where the card actually goes. I fumbled around a little bit trying to figure out the settings, how to change shutter speed, ISO, all of that. I found it fairly intuitive. I think that shutter speed was the easiest thing to change. You can customize and change where you change those settings. So this is, again, just how she has her camera set up. I didn't have time to go through and change things. So me a little bit, but I did find most of the things. I changed the shutter speed, the ISO, the Kelvin white balance. We'll get to the f-stop in a second. Right away, when I shoot with my R6, I use the back screen, but also the electronic viewfinder. And I find that I can transition seamlessly from one to the other. But as soon as I put this up to my face, the electronic viewfinder on the Sony was not, it was a noticeable difference of bad. I instantly knew I did not want to use the electronic viewfinder, and I've seen some people using Sony cameras and I never see them holding it up to their face, and that's probably why. It has a little bit more of a lag. It's not quite as crisp. So I find that I can use the viewfinder on the Canon pretty well, but the Sony, I felt like I had to hold the camera out, which is not a big deal because I shoot both ways now. But that is something to note. I did not like the EVF on the Sony. So here we are trying to figure out where the f-stop is to change it. It was set at f4 or something, and I wanted to go all the way open to f1.8, which is what the lens could do. And so here we are trying to figure that out. And there it is. It's in the front. There's a little wheel in the front. Again, she hasn't had it that long, so she couldn't remember. She had to like hold the camera and figure it out. But we did figure out where the f-stop was, and that's pretty simple to change. The shutter speed and f-stop were the easiest to change. But yeah, so we just started shooting, and this is just some footage of us. Another thing I did want to note is on the back, the screen, it has a grid for the rule of thirds. I don't know if that's something that can be turned on, turned off. That's just how it was on her camera. I don't even know that Canon may have something like that, but I've never used it. But I found it somewhat helpful, a little distracting. I'm sure you could probably take it off, so not a big deal, but I did want to note it. Focus seemed to be pretty quick. She had hers set to back button focus, which I've never really enjoyed. When I had the 5D Mark II and III, I tried back button focus, but never really enjoyed it. So I used the eye focus on the R6. Actually didn't mind it too much on the Sony. The button felt, I know this sounds weird, but the button felt good, like it was a big enough button. I feel like the back button focus on the Canon was like little, and it just wasn't, I didn't like it. I don't know. It didn't take me long to get used to it. It was a little bit weird, but the focus seemed to be pretty quick, seemed to be pretty accurate. There were a couple of times the focus was on the eyebrows instead of the eyes. It seemed to track pretty well. I had her moving around, spinning, going back and forth. Focus seemed to follow her pretty well. Grip on this camera, the indent where your, I guess, middle finger goes is a lot deeper on the Sony, and so when you first hold it, it feels definitely different. But I got used to it really quick, and I actually liked it. Had a little bit more secure of a grip on the Sony. So the ergonomics of it, the camera, it feels nice. The thing I did miss a lot is the control ring on the Canon. I know some people use it, some people don't, but the control ring on the Canon lenses for the RF mount, I use all the time. So on my Canon, I have it set up where I can change my shutter, my f-stop, my ISO, and then on the control ring, I change my white balance, my Kelvin, because I shoot in Kelvin. And so I like being able to change when I go to a different lighting situation, be able to quickly change that. And I really did miss the control ring. I couldn't change the Kelvin really fast. I don't like having to take the camera down away from my face and go through menus and change things. The Sony can be configured and made where you can do that through different settings, but I did want to know that I did miss the control ring. So we sat down after we shot and we each talked about our initial thoughts of this camera, of just kind of tell you what we said there and then talk about the actual images and the quality of the images. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit more cumbersome switching entire systems because I've used the Canon and only the Canon for 12 years now. So I actually thought it was going to be a little bit more cumbersome, but it was pretty easy to switch. It was pretty easy to switch over, and again, I don't think it would take me long to get used to where the different settings are on the Sony. Really go through the menus a whole lot in the Sony, so I don't know if they're as intuitive as the Canon menus are, but I did not find it difficult to switch the settings throughout the session. As far as the aesthetics of them, I actually like the way the Sony looks. I love the red ring where you attach the lens to the body. I like the angles of the Sony. I just think it looks a little bit more nostalgic, a little older feeling. So I do like the look of the Sony. Allie's thoughts on the Sony, again, she's used it for maybe 3 different shoots now. Her Sony and her Canon at these shoots. So she's shot some with the Sony and some with her Canon during these shoots. And so she's actually been able to compare them side by side during shoots. She thinks the Sony images are a little bit more crisp than the Canon, but I do want to note the megapixel difference may have something to do with that. The Sony has 33 megapixels. The R6 I think is around 21. I'll put that on the screen, but I think it's fairly low. I do want to note here, I'm not a super techie person, so if I'm saying something incorrectly about specs, you can correct me in the comments, but be nice about it. But yeah, so she thinks that the Sony images are a little bit more crisp. I'm about to go into the images and show you them so you can see the ones I took. I really wish that I had taken a shot with my Canon and the Sony of the exact same thing at the same time so I could compare that, but I did not. I will do that in the future when I test out other camera bodies. It'll be interesting to see in the next 6 months or so if she switches over to using Sony more or if she sticks with her Canon. I would love to hear from you if you have a Sony and a Canon, or if you've had them both, which one you prefer and why. But let's go into the images real quick. Let's open Lightroom here so I can see these while I'm talking. I really, really loved the olive background at this studio. It was really pretty. I do want to say the colors, I know the main thing I hear about Sony versus Canon is people talk about the skin tones, and I was very curious to see if the skin tones were different, if they edited different, if, you know, how that was. And I will say I did notice a pretty big difference in the skin tones. Not a bad difference necessarily, it's just a little bit different of a look. I find that the photos edited to be a little bit more moody. I'm not sure why I feel that way. I just get a little bit more of a vintagey, moody vibe. I feel like they're crisp, but they're a little more dreamy. I think they don't have as much contrast coming out of the camera. Here's one image, and I like the way the skin tones ended up in it, but I do think that they are a little bit different than they are on my Canon images. I feel like the oranges are a little more muted on the Sony. I think the skin tones are a little different, but I don't hate it. I actually feel like the images straight out of the camera and even edited like I normally edit feel like Allie's style more. I feel like they suit her style of editing. So I feel like she's really going to enjoy the Sony, and I thoroughly enjoyed these pictures. Let's zoom in. Let's take this one and let's zoom in on the eyes real quick so you can see it is pretty crisp. I feel like sometimes, like I said earlier, it does focus on the eyebrows a little bit more, but I feel like it has a little bit more of a grain to it. This picture is at ISO 125, so not a high ISO at all, but I feel like there's a little bit more of a grit to them. Maybe that's the dreamy quality that she is referring to. I don't know, I think that overall they feel a little bit more moody. Crispness also has to do with the lens too, so I don't know how expensive or how high quality of a lens it is compared to my, you know, Canon L lens here. So I know that that makes a difference as well. But I really think the files are good quality. I actually would enjoy shooting with the Sony some more. I don't know that it's something I want to switch over to by any means. So overall, I really enjoyed shooting with the mirrorless Sony camera. I do know a lot of Canon users who have switched over to Sony when they switched to mirrorless. So let me know in the comments below which one you prefer if you've tried them both. I may end up trying hers out some more in the future, we'll see. But also let me know which camera you want me to try next. Do you want me to try a Nikon mirrorless? I feel like that's the one I'm gonna be the most reluctant to try for some reason. I have a bad image of Nikon in my head, and I think it's just from working at a portrait studio with the Nikon. Yeah, there's also a Leica camera that I want to try so bad. It's expensive and it's a fixed lens camera, but I really want it's the Q2, so it's an expensive camera, but I want to rent it and try it out. So let me know what camera I should try out next in this Canon user tries whatever camera series. All right guys, that is gonna wrap up this one. I hope that it was at least a little bit helpful when it comes to determining what you want for a mirrorless camera. Again, this is just the first one I've done in this series. If there's more information you want me to include in the next one, or if you want me to do any more videos with the Sony camera, I'm sure Allie would love to meet up again and shoot. I always love shooting with Allie. I've known her since we were teenagers, and she is one of my very best friends. So, but that is gonna wrap it up for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already and wanna see future videos, hit that subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. Yes, go up the nose. Thank you. Bye. We have one. Let's go. So we sat down and we each told.